World leaders are meeting for COP26. This is the 26th time that they've met in a climate summit.
It's called the Conference of Parties because it's a group of not only nations but also organizations.
It's a global summit under the administration of the United Nations. This one is hosted by the UK, by Boris Johnson. It will happen in Glasgow, Scotland.
The conference begins in the beginning of November and it goes for about 2 weeks.
And the politics of it, the politics are a mess.
For President Biden, this will be his first COP to go to as president.
He's walking into a pretty febrile atmosphere.
When he was on the campaign trail, he campaigned as a climate president. He had a really sort of, to some activists, quite surprisingly bold agenda focused on reducing emissions. And he's coming in after the very tumultuous presidency of Donald Trump.
President Trump, as you recall, pulled the United States out of the Paris Agreement.
The United States will withdraw.
A commitment done back in 2015.
From the Paris Climate Accord.
President Biden campaigned and has postured himself as sort of the polar opposite, as a leader who wants to not only re-engage the United States in these climate agreements.
We're going to get back into the Paris Agreement, back into the business of leading the world.
But also take on a leadership role on the global stage to where the United States is setting the agenda on climate and trying to rally other countries around it. And so to take on that role, one typically does need to show that they've done quite a lot themselves. And so that's sort of where Biden is right now. He's going into this conference and really hoping to go in with his agenda in place.
Biden has been dealt a tough hand because, a month or so back with the majorities in the Senate and the House and this trillions of dollars in spending on infrastructure, that had a big part of that money was climate marked.
Biden's climate agenda is broken up into two major pieces of legislation. One is a bipartisan infrastructure bill, but another large chunk of it is in what's referred to as the Build Back Better agenda or the reconciliation bill. It's much larger than what President Obama promised. It is, in fact, the boldest climate agenda that any president has ever enacted.
He could have had a really big thing to display, right? So the U.S. is going to spend this enormous amount of money on energy transition and all these clever things to reduce our emissions and to sequester carbon in farms and to help animals and wildlife and all these other things. But he doesn't have that yet. He's got, like a lot of world leaders, a lot of promises.
I'm telling you, we're going to get this done.
Of course, one of the quirks of the version of democracy that the United States uses is that while both chambers of Congress are controlled by Democrats, the upper chamber of the Senate is controlled by the narrowest possible margin. And one of the senators, who's a Democrat, who has been one of the key negotiators in this piece of legislation, is Joe Manchin.
I've never been a liberal in any way, shape, or the form.
And he is from West Virginia, which is a coal mining state. I mean, coal is king in West Virginia and is very much a part of the negotiations in Biden's Build Back Better agenda, is what exactly will Joe Manchin support when it comes to climate.
The U.S. and Britain and the Europeans are having big asks. Countries like India and China, even Russia to some degree, and lots of developing countries, and they look at the U.S. and the G20 and say, well, that's nice of you to make a lot of promises, but what are you actually really doing? And it's nice of you to make a lot of promises, but you caused most of this problem.
When Biden goes to Glasgow, he'll be there, we believe, for the first few days. When most of the world leaders are going to be there, they'll be giving opening statements. One of the big tension points is China, because the Chinese leader, Xi, is not planning on attending.
But they have to get big polluters, China, India, Brazil, etc., to commit to very ambitious goals, which they have not yet. So you want a strong hand because they'll call baloney to you, right?